Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're your express pass, really getting into the weeds of NBA free agency. It's always an exhilarating time, right? High stakes, big moves.
Absolutely. And sometimes, surprising twists that just reshape the whole league picture.
Exactly. So our mission here today is to kind of cut through all that noise. We want to deliver the key takeaways, the surprising facts about who's moving, where they're going.
And crucially, what these strategic decisions actually mean for the teams involved and, well, the NBA overall.
Yeah, and we've done our homework. We've pulled from top sources, CBS Sports, ESPN, Hoops, Rumors, you name it, to give you a really solid, insightful overview.
hmm
Today, we're diving deep into some key player movements and maybe some of the, let's say, interesting, sometimes perplexing strategic choices teams are making right as free agency kicks off.
Yeah, perplexing is a good word sometimes. What's really striking, I think, is just how fast things can shift. One decision here creates ripples everywhere else.
Totally. And free agency is basically knocking on the door, right? Just 2 days away.
Yeah. It's here. The market's already buzzing. We're hearing names.
Okay, let's get into it then. Top names potentially on the move.
Hmm.
You've got James Harden, Chris Paul, Miles Turner. Let's start with Harden. He had a pretty good regular season with the Clippers.
He did, yeah. Solid year.
But, I mean, we all know his recent track record. Brooklyn, then Philly, now L.A., all in like 4 years.
Moves around a bit, doesn't he?
So he's got that player option. What's the feeling? Does he test the market or?
Well, the general expectation, I'd say, is that James Harden probably sticks with the Clippers. He's likely going to opt out of that player option.
Right. Decline the money for next year.
Exactly, to try and get a longer-term deal locked in with them. But here's the key thing for you to understand. His leverage isn't actually that great this summer.
Oh, why is that?
There just isn't much cap space floating around the league. So it's really tough for him to, create a bidding war and play teams off each other. He doesn't have many other places to realistically threaten to go.
Gotcha. So he can't really force their hand too much. What kind of deal is he likely aiming for then, given that limited leverage?
He's probably looking at something like 3 years, maybe around $40 million per year. And he can point to Kyrie Irving's potential deal with Dallas as a comp.
Even with Kyrie reportedly rehabbing that torn ACL.
Yeah, because Harden can walk in and say, look, I'm healthy right now. Give me something similar. But for the Clippers, I mean, it's a tough calculation. Do you pay that kind of money to a guy who's 36 now?
And could be 38, 39 by the end of the deal.
Exactly. That's a massive commitment, a big risk down the line.
Huge commitment. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. The Minnesota Timberwolves, they're facing their own financial tightrope, particularly with Julius Randle and his, $30 million player option.
Yeah, $30 million. And they just signed Naz Reid to that huge deal.
Right, the mega deal. So how does locking up Reid impact Randle's future there? And, their whole roster setup.
Well, now that Reid is secured, the focus really pivots to Randle. They want to re-sign him to a longer deal. The original plan, remember, was trying to keep Reid, Randle, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker.
Ah, okay.
So it's highly likely Randle opts out of that one-year option to get a new, longer contract. But that probably means Alexander-Walker ends up playing somewhere else next season. They likely can't afford all three.
And this is where that dreaded second tax apron comes in, isn't it? We saw the Celtics, right after winning the title, basically gut parts of their roster to avoid it.
Yeah, exactly. And people need to understand this isn't just about paying more tax money. It's about crippling strategic handcuffs.
How bad is it? Like, what restrictions kick in?
If Minnesota kept all three, say Randle opted in, and they find Alexander Walker, they'd almost certainly hit that second apron. What that means is, boom, you lose key tools. Can't combine two players in a trade. Can't send cash in trades. Can't use the taxpayer mid-level exception. It basically freezes your ability to improve the roster mid-season or make certain kinds of deals. Remember what Boston just did, trading away guys like Drew Holiday and Porzingis specifically to get under that line.
Yeah.
That tells you how severe teams view those penalties.
Yeah, that really drives it home. So the most probable path for Minnesota is Randle opts out, gets a new deal, and unfortunately for them, Alexander Walker likely walks.
That seems like the most logical outcome right now, yeah.
Yeah. Intriguing stuff. All right, let's look at some other potential moves. Bobby Portis. He recently said he's taken team-friendly deals to stay with the Bucks.
Loves Milwaukee.
But the Bucks are kind of in a tough spot, right? Roster limits, Dame Lillard's injury situation. If they can't keep Portis, where might he land?
Well, if the Bucks can't make it work, one team that keeps popping up in connection with Portis is Golden State. The Warriors.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, their lack of size was glaring in the playoffs, especially against Gobert and the Wolves.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Portis could step right in and help with that. He spreads the floor, hits threes, gives you that spark plug energy off the bench, especially if Jonathan Kuminga isn't part of their picture anymore.
Makes sense.
Apparently, Portis is generating, considerable curiosity around the league, especially if he turns down his $13.4 million player option to seek a multi-year deal. Though sources say the Bucks are still well-positioned to keep him if they want to.
Okay, now sticking with the Warriors.
Yeah.
Let's talk Kuminga. You mentioned him. Steve Kerr openly talked about the awkward fit and Kuminga's lack of consistent minutes.
Yeah, never quite clicked consistently there.
There were initial reports linking him to Miami. How real was that? And what's Golden State's plan with him?
Yeah, those Miami reports seem to have been a bit overstated. It doesn't sound like there was ever an active pursuit from the Heat, but hey, things can change fast in this league.
Sure.
Kuminga, maybe not your classic Heat culture guy, but you could argue he addresses their need for someone who can actually get to the rim consistently.
Okay. And the Warrior strategy.
They definitely want to do a sign-and-trade. He's a restricted free agent, so they can match any offer. A sign-and-trade lets him get his new contract, but the Warriors get assets back instead of just losing him for nothing. They want to get something in return.
Right. Makes sense. Which leads us to this, well, kind of wild proposal that's floating around. Warriors offering Kuminga and 4 first-round picks to Boston for Derek White.
Yeah. Sounds crazy at first glance, right? 4 firsts.
Sounds like a massive overpay. Does that even make sense?
Well, here's the thing. It might not be as audacious as it sounds initially. You look at the recent Desmond Bane deal that involved 4 first-rounders and a pick swap. That kind of reset the market, set a new precedent for that level of draft capital.
Oh, okay, the Bane deal precedent.
Exactly. And for the Warriors, think about Derek White's value. He's just a seamless fit. He can bring the ball up, which takes pressure off Steph Curry. He's a lights-out three-point shooter, elite defender. Imagine a trio of Curry, Jimmy Butler, and White. That's terrifying.
Okay, I see the appeal for Golden State. What's in it for Boston? They just won a title. Why trade White?
For the Celtics, it's all about those 4 first-round picks. That's premium currency. It gives them incredibly valuable assets to maybe flip for another star down the line or acquire high-end role players once Jason Tatum's back healthy. It's about reloading for the future while still being strong now.
Okay. Bold. But you can see the logic on both sides. Interesting. All right, let's switch gears again. Chris Paul. Obviously getting older, undersized free agent.
Yep.
The Spurs probably aren't keeping him, right? Even with the whole mentorship thing with Wemby.
Seems unlikely. Yeah. They have talented guards.
But is CP3 still a valuable guy? And if so, where's the best basketball fit for him?
Oh, absolutely. He's still valuable. He can still contribute. And for my money, the best pure basketball fit is probably Dallas.
Dallas. Why them?
Well, think about it. They need a starting point guard, especially with Kyrie Irving potentially out to March, maybe even the whole season. And Paul, he's proven he's a great mentor, right? He guided Shai in OKC, Ayton in Phoenix, Wemby last year in San Antonio. He could do the same for guys like Cooper Flagg, Anthony Davis, Klay Thompson potentially.
Okay, the mentorship angle is strong.
And his durability. Played all 82 games last season at 39 years old, first time since he was 29. That's incredible.
Yeah.
His game now is perfect for setting the table, facilitating for ball-dominant guys like Luka, not needing to be the main scorer.
So on paper, Dallas looks perfect. But there's a catch, isn't there? His personal preference.
Exactly. That's the conflict. We know Paul wants to be closer to his family, his home base in LA. He's thinking West Coast teams, California, maybe Phoenix again.
Right.
But if he still wants to play at a really high level on a legitimate winning team, Dallas arguably offers him the best shot at that right now. So it's that classic dilemma, best basketball situation versus personal preference, a choice a lot of vets face.
Yeah. Happens all the time. Okay, speaking of dilemmas and maybe questionable choices, let's talk about the Chicago Bulls. They often feel like a case study in asset management or, well...
mismanagement, some would say.
Yeah. And there's breaking news here. The Cleveland Cavaliers are getting Lonzo Ball from the Bulls for Isaac Okoro.
Yep, just came across the wire.
Lonzo obviously coming back after basically 2 years off, multiple knee surgeries, that wrist sprain. Only played 35 games last season. What are the Cavs thinking here? What are they getting?
Cleveland's basically taking a low-risk flyer on him. Lonzo's in the final year of his deal. It's a pretty manageable contract structure moving forward, like 2 years, $20 million total with a team option. So they didn't give up significant assets for him, considering the injury risk.
Makes sense. Low risk.
And look, when he's healthy, Lonzo is an amazing two-way player, great point of attack defender, solid shooter. He was key to that really good Bulls defense a couple of years ago. He basically slides into Okoro's minutes, gives them a defensive anchor, can run the offense off the bench.
And strategically for Cleveland.
They clearly wanted more defense, right? They struggled against the Pacers' speed in the playoffs. Lonzo helps them keep up, theoretically. This move, plus Sam Merrill signing that 4-year, $38 million deal, it puts the Cavs in a really strong spot in the East. Maybe even pole position, you could argue, with the best odds right now. Plus 210, especially with injury concerns for Boston and Indiana.
Okay. And didn't Garland just have surgery too?
Yeah, Darius Garland had toe surgery. Expected out 4 or 5 months, so he'll likely miss the start of the season. Makes getting a guy like Lonzo, even with his history, potentially more valuable for depth.
So for the Cavs, it looks like a smart, calculated gamble. But for the Bulls, trading Lonzo for Isaac Okoro, it feels underwhelming.
It does feel a bit underwhelming, yeah. Okoro, he's pretty much purely a defensive guy. Physical, a defensive dog, absolutely. But offensively.
Yeah, the shooting's always been the question mark, right?
Yep.
Career 35% from three, averaged like 6 points last year.
Exactly. And this is where the criticism of the Bulls comes in again. It feels like maybe they missed a bigger opportunity. There were those widespread rumors at the trade deadline, remember? That they could have gotten a first-round pick, allegedly the 17th pick from Memphis for Lonzo, if they'd been willing to take back some salary.
Right, I remember that talk.
Yeah.
But they didn't do it.
They didn't, and now many are saying they waited too long, his value dropped because of the continued injury concerns, and they didn't capitalize when they could have. This trade feels like a microcosm, really, of this larger pattern people criticize the Bulls for.
What pattern is that
It's
exactly?
just consistently questionable asset management, holding on to players, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Alex Caruso, arguably until their value goes down, and then trading them for what feels like, well, laughably little return, often without getting significant draft picks back.
Can you give some examples?
Sure. Look at the Alex Caruso trade. Just got Josh Giddey back, no picks, and Caruso becomes a huge difference maker for OKC on their run. The DeMar DeRozan sign-in trade, widely seen as a poor haul. The Zach LaVine trade only got them their own 2025 first-rounder back, which turned into the 12th pick.
Yeah, you list them out like that.
It points to this confusing strategic inconsistency. You know, they seem to refuse to commit to a full rebuild, but they also aren't successfully acquiring future assets. Instead, they get guys like Okoro, maybe for experience or to still be competitive, but that seems to contradict a patient long-term strategy.
So Okoro gives them defense and physicality, which they do need.
He does, yeah.
But he doesn't really help their biggest need, which is volume three-point shooting.
Not at all, which makes the overall benefit of this trade kind of just a trade for Chicago, you feel.
Yeah, feels about right. A challenging spot for Bulls fans. Any other quick hits on their roster situation?
Well, on a more positive note, Josh Giddey looks like he's heading towards a nice multi-year deal, maybe around $30 million a year. He was a bright spot for them after the trade.
Okay.
And I would assume, honestly, he's become one of the most underrated players in the league. Elite two-way guy, averaged over 12 points, shot over 40% from three last season. He's a really valuable role player.
Good point. Io's been solid.
Yeah.
What about Trey Jones or Vucevic?
Re-signing Trey Jones seems like a real possibility. The coaching staff reportedly loved what he brought. Trading Lonzo clears some backcourt space. Vucevic, trade chatter seems pretty quiet there. Hard to move that contract. And there's still some talk around maybe trading Io, actually, more so than Bobby White.
Okay, lots to track there, Celso. We've covered quite a bit today. Major free agency moves heating up for stars like Harden and Paul. The complex strategic choices for teams like Minnesota with the tax apron. Golden State with potential blockbusters.
Right, and that whole ongoing complicated saga surrounding the Chicago Bulls and how they manage their assets.
Hopefully breaking this all down gives you, the listener, a better handle on this intricate, high-stakes chess match that is the NBA offseason.
Yeah, it's definitely more than just signings. It's about the ripple effects, the finances, the long-term strategy behind every move.
It truly is a game within the game. And maybe that leaves us with one final thought for you to chew on. In a league where so many teams are focused on strategic rebuilds, hoarding draft picks, what's the real long-term cost for a team like the Bulls that seems determined to stay competitive rather than accumulating future assets?
Does avoiding that full teardown just put a ceiling on how good you can ultimately be? Or is there maybe another path to success that they're trying to find, even if it looks confusing from the outside? Something to think about.